All right, I think we should be good.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just make sure.
All right.
It is showing the live stream on my feed, which it did not last week. All right. I think we are Gucci to start. So if you don't mind doing it, Dante, even though last week, was episode 93, and you joggled your words up on the intro for the first time in 93 attempts, and then had me doing it on the outro. So if you don't mind doing
So
the
we're
show.
officially live right now.
We have been live for 2 minutes, so if you ruined your
Actually, a
computer.
minute, 15 seconds. I wasn't sure if we were still testing or if we were actually live.
Yeah, we
If
were
you're
having
watching this,
just
we
real
had
quickly
some
for the viewers.
technical difficulties,
Yeah.
but welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Dante DePlacido, joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I've got to ask, what's the deal with the Phillies? What's going on? I mean, it was a good start to the season. Good first three series. They won the first three series. They beat the Dodgers. Then, they struggled against Atlanta. It's like, okay, maybe Atlanta's coming back to form here. And then Atlanta ended up playing like crap after that series. And the Phillies just continued to play like crap. They're about to lose the series to the San Francisco Giants. They won yesterday. Although the day before that, Taiwan Walker was absolutely terrible. He came back to form, speaking of people doing that. And now they currently find themselves down 4-2 against the Giants with Aaron Nola on the mound, having yet another bad start. He's not had a good start so far this season. You could argue he has one quality start to his credit when he pitched 6 innings, giving up 3 runs. And it's like, if you're a good pitcher like Zach Wheeler and you have an appearance like that, it's like, okay, yeah, fine. Quality start. But Aaron Nola, with how bad he's pitching, I'm not even going to credit him with a decent start on that one. He's just been bad. So
Yeah,
what's the deal?
Aaron Nola's been absolutely horrible this year. I tweeted, I just got off of work, and then I tweeted watching the game, was taking a shower, glossed by the TV, and I happened to see that the bases are loaded, and there's 1 run in, and then I think he walked a run to make it 2-0. And then by the blink of an eye, it was 4-0, 2 innings into the game. So with Aaron Nola, I tweeted in that moment was saying it kind of reminded me of the Sixers when they got rid of the Tobias Harris contract that was weighing them down for how many years, and they go right into the Paul George contract, which could be argued to be even worse with the expectations that you put on them. And Taiwan Walker is still on this team, and that contract is still eating up the Phillies, part of the Phillies salary, and they're at the point where they're not willing to spend any more money on like a top end scale. So that's really holding them back. Like having a contract like that, that's just pretty much untradeable, especially in the MLB. Like you're not going to be able to attach draft picks to it or anything like that. I don't think anybody sees Taiwan Walker a part of their starting rotation, or they would have ventured out to try and get him in that way. So Aaron Nola is on the second year of his 7-year contract extension, making right around like $25 million a year. And it just reminds me of the Sixers going from Tobias Harris to Paul George. But this time the Phillies have both of those players still currently on the roster, eating up what? That's like
That's a total, I think, $44 million. I think
yeah.
Walker's 20 a year. I will say the Paul George contract is off to a much worse start than the Tobias Harris contract. I mean, at least Tobias Harris was on the court. At least the first year or two, he was still a solid role player.
Yeah,
Paul George.
but Tobias Harris should have never had a max contract.
No, he never should have had it.
Paul
He
George's
never should have
career
had it. But
resume.
at least his first year in his contract went a lot better
Well,
than
Paul
Paul
George, the
George's
thing about
first
Paul
year in
George is
his.
like his career resume shows that he is a max contract player, but he's not currently performing that way. There was nothing that alluded to Tobias Harris ever earning a max contract in the NBA. So that just pretty much sums it up.
Yeah,
for
that
me.
was. But let's not get caught up on that. Let's talk about these fight-ins. So yeah, right now, 2 of the 5 starters are pitching horribly. I think with Walker, it was kind of foreshadowing in his second start when he didn't give up any runs, but it was 4 2/3 of ugly pitching from him. He just didn't really end up giving up any runs, but just it didn't look good at the same time, and it was kind of foreshadowing of the horrible performance he would have his next outing.
But I don't know. I don't know if it hits you the same way that it does for me, Dante. But when we're sitting here and constantly complaining about, I'm not saying that we specifically do it, but a lot of Philadelphia sports fans, we sit here complain about Bryce Huff, Tobias Harris when he was a Sixer, Paul George nowadays, Taijuan Walker. I mean, Paul George is somebody that is like it's warranted that we complain about him because he's supposed to be the second best or third best player on the Sixers and making a huge impact and a huge role. But when we're talking about these other guys that aren't in that same talent class and we have to complain about them like Taijuan Walker, we shouldn't even be going about the Johan Rojas's and Taijuan Walkers. We need to look at the people that actually are making the big bucks and are making the engine go.
Well, you know what? While you're saying what you're saying, speaking of that, as we're talking about the players making big bucks and performing well, Nick Castellanos just lines a single to get a base hit to lead off the inning. That is a guy I was going to get to eventually. I do want to highlight the players that are playing well. Nick Castellanos is off to a great start to the season, batting above 300, hitting timely home runs, timely RBI knocks. He's looked really good so far this year. And I did see a tweet that ever since June of last year, they were showing his number since June of last year, and ever since then, he's been swinging the bat really, really well.
Yeah, I think also since the All-Star break of last year, Brandon Marsh is batting like 208 or something outrageously crazy. But yeah,
And
I mean, Nick
that's one of the
Castellanos,
guys that's playing.
you almost back in the day, you almost thought I was giving Nick Castellanos too much praise because he was like been one of my favorite players on the Phillies, and I more so defended him than other
I
people
always
that got
thought
on him.
Castellanos gets too
Well,
much
the
hate.
one thing I will say is like I was very optimistic about Castellanos forever. Like he had his low lights, but I would more so mention what he can do and what he did bring to the team. It just wasn't as consistent. But this is also a guy where the issue with the Phillies is he's like the sixth or seventh guy. They had him like batting 6 or 7 in years past, and he was producing in those roles, but he was a little bit inconsistent. But now with the struggles of other players on the team like JT, Real Muto, Alec Boehm, and Brandon Marshes of the world, you've had to move Nick Castellanos all the way up into the order where it's not the same impact where you had all the other guys producing and then him at the back end of the lineup also producing. He's like thrust into a role which I thought he should be in the whole time because I always thought Nick Castellanos was probably the third best hitter on the Phillies. If not, he's more consistent, can do more than Kyle Schwarber as a hitter. He just doesn't have the same
He is
pop all the time.
certainly performing like the third or I mean he's right now he's a top 3 hitter on the Phillies. I mean, I don't know
Alec
which
Boehm
order
at
you
his
want to
best.
put it
He's
in.
better than Alec Boehm at his best because he's a more consistent power hitter.
Oh,
Alec Boehm
absolutely.
Alec
And,
Boehm's good, but like when Alec Boehm was like seen as the 4-hole hitter, I never really understood that. I liked Alec Boehm more so in that 5 or 6 spot. And we talked about before how JT is just, I don't know what the luxury of having JT at the top of the lineup. Like
I
they've
don't
always
know
tried to do
what the
is.
point of DHing JT is, which is the current situation in today's ball game. Marchand has to start at catcher with JT DHing and Kyle Schwarber in left. I see no point in DHing JT as he strikes out swinging with Castellanos on
Do you think
first.
that's like more so of Topper just trying to try like too many new things? Because we also saw
Maybe, yeah, because I
he
mean,
implemented
JT right
Bryson
now at this
Stott.
point in JT's career, his only strong suit is how good he is behind the dish. There's no point in DHing him. And by the way, with another guy I want to talk about, with how good JT is behind the dish, Marchand, my God, he is good. I mean, he's got a cannon for an arm. He's got a real quick pop time. I mean, listen, I love JT, but if the best he can bring to the table is his defense and Marchand is giving you the same level of defense, then I definitely think after this year it's time to move on from JT and hand the reins over to Rafael Marchand.
I would be down like JT if we're going to talk about the contract situation with him, like how we noted as the season started that Schwarber, Ranger Suarez, and JT are all going into the last year of their contract. JT, I would be down for him to stick around. Catcher, I feel like they could platoon catcher with Marshawn and JT. They're doing it a little bit more this year, but it's been JT
I think to
all along.
platoon
But I would give like
most
JT
of
like
the
a 2 year
year.
contract. Like I would give him a 2 year contract, and that would probably max out like
Hmm.
around the age of where he really starts to dip off. I think his defense is still really good. He still has like
Is that
timely
fair?
big hits. But I mean, I'm not going to give JT lock him into this long term deal, and I'm not going to force the issue. Like if he wants a long term deal, and that's the only way that he's staying on the roster, then I'm not going to offer him that.
I would just let him walk. I mean, what's even the point of bringing him back for 2 years to platoon with Marshawn? I mean, listen,
Well, Marshawn can't be trusted
Marshawn.
to like be healthy though. That's the thing. He's
Well, I
never
mean, but
proven
that's what I
that, and
mean. You
I
see
don't want
how
it
it
to
plays
become an
out
issue
this
where
year. As long as it continues to go well this year, then you let JT walk.
I
But
don't want it
speaking
to
of,
become an issue where like Garrett Stubbs is brought back up to the majors because JT left, and like now it's like Marshawn and like Garrett Stubbs. You know what I mean? But I will
well,
say
no, you
about
can
Garrett
go
Stubbs,
out and get a different backup catcher than Stubbs. I'm not saying let's put Stubbs back in the majors. That's the last thing I want to see.
the one credit
But
I
as
will
long as
give Garrett
Marshawn
Stubbs
continues to
is
play well, and we still see a lack of offense out of JT, then I am a-okay with handing the reins over to Marshawn after this season. But I mean, it's still a long season. You gotta see how it plays out. We can't really make our decisions based off a few weeks of baseball. But speaking of a guy who's
real quickly, Garrett Stubbs. I will give him credit because a lot of people say that he's really I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on the word that I want to use. He's really elevated the minor league pitching, the way that he's able to call a game for those guys. So I think he provides value like that. You like to have a nice veteran that's able to call games like that and, accelerate the progression of the pitchers at that level. So, he does play a value and a role for the team, but I mean, he's not somebody that I would ever see as like being able to get a day a week at the catcher spot. So with
no, hell
JT,
no. I mean,
JT's
when
like,
he's at the plate, it's literally like watching a pitcher taking at bat. I don't see a huge difference in a Garrett Stubbs at bat versus your
it
average
would be
pitcher.
different if like he had like random pop in his bat where he could hit like 12 home runs in like 60 to 80 games, like filling in, you know what I mean? Like that would be different. But that's
He
not the case.
offers
So.
absolutely nothing at the plate. Um, but by the way, speaking of Bohm struggling, he did right before Sosa pops out, he did actually just hit a blue base hit into the outfield that moved Castellanos over to third, but then Sosa pops out. Runners at the corners now, 2 outs.
But
Um,
Alec Boehm's numbers have shown that he's actually hitting the ball well. It's just going like directly at the
yeah,
fence.
I did see
There's
that.
other
Somebody
guys.
did
It
post
was
his advanced stats
I think
that
Pete Crow
online.
Armstrong, the Cubs outfielder, just went crazy on Sunday Night Baseball. I think he had 2 home runs and a double. But before that, I think it might not have been the exact day of Sunday, but I know I was watching MLB Network the other day, and it was around the weekend, and I think he had a ball to barrel rate of literally 0 before that Sunday night performance. Like, and he's like a top prospect, you know what I mean? That was like mightily struggling. So there's some guys that are struggling that literally can't even do anything out there, can't even make contact with the ball. And then there's other guys that are making contact, and it's a little unfortunate. But with that also being said, it's not, something where it's like, oh, well, Alec Boehm's doing all the right things and it's just not working out. Like there's a little give and take in there where it's like Alec
He
Boehm
is
does need to
striking
change his
out a
approach.
good bit as well. On the flip side, I think somebody posted those numbers for Bryson Stott, who's off to a solid start this year, but his numbers in that department
Well,
are
that's
not
also what I was
looking
going to
great.
ask you about because Topper's, been very experimental to begin the season. Some people thought a lot of people were grilling him the other day for not standing up for JT on that egregious call, and he also said that he didn't think the call was egregious, which I was like, dude, what are you even watching
It
if
was
you don't think
pretty
that was one of
egregious.
the worst strikeout calls that I've seen in a very long time, and a lot of people noted that JT doesn't really react like that, especially for a guy that sees pitches all day long, being a catcher himself. But Topper's been very experimental. A lot of people were not happy with him being lackadaisical like he normally is and being too chill in that moment and not taking the opportunity to vent some frustration and protect his player. But we talked about Schwarber actually playing in the outfield today, and how, I mean, in 2022 he was an outfielder every single day. And he also has implemented Bryson Stott as the third version of a leadoff hitter for the Phillies lineups, which I've actually come to enjoy a little bit. I actually
He's
like
been
that
he's
lineup
been doing well in the leadoff role.
because I feel like they're not like, I feel like their real issue, if I'm going to jam pack it, is like 3 through 6. That's where I'm really sensing all the issues in the lineup. Is like the bottom of the
I
order is
listen.
like what the bottom of the order is, but they have a bunch of guys. They have 4 to 5 really good hitters that are above average that should be producing in the middle of that lineup, and they're just not getting consistent efforts from any of them. And it just seems like none of them are on the same page at the same time.
There are 3 Phillies who I would say are hitting really well, or at least getting on base really well. And that's Schwarber, who's off to an amazing start. We were just talking about this before we went live. His OBP is like 429. His slugging's above 600. He's got 6 home runs so far this year. His batting average is much higher than it typically is. Granted, we're only a few weeks in, but as of right now, I mean, Schwarber looks tremendous. He's hitting the ball very well. Nick Castellanos, who I already mentioned, and of course Bryce Harper, who's sporting a high OBP of
That definitely, I don't
377.
think. I mean, Bryce is, he's been a little bit under what a normal Bryce Harper pace is. He's been decent.
But compared to the rest of the hitters on the team, he's doing
I know,
very
but
well.
he's in his own class where it's like he's out there, and like I talked about before, Kyle Schwarber. I was critical of him before, just more so based off in the leadoff spot. That's where I was like, all my frustration about him. It was just like I was being negative, but it was more so about him just being in the leadoff spot. But now you see the impact that he can have not being in the leadoff spot. And it's just like so refreshing to see. But Kyle Schwarber's in that category now too, where I mean, he's probably been in that category. I've just been a little hard on him personally. But Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper have to be held to a different standard. But like what Nick Castellanos, he also has to be held to the standard of being the consistent guy that he's showing to be right now. Because Nick Castellanos, they signed this guy to that contract the same year that they signed Kyle Schwarber, and they gave Castellanos an extra year over what they gave Kyle Schwarber. That's why Kyle Schwarber's contract's up at the end of this year, and Castellanos has this year and next year. That just shows the belief that they had in him as a player.
If there is ever a Philly athlete who needs a contract extension, it's Kyle Schwarber. I
What did
think
you hear you heard about how they kind of broke off talks since they offered him a contract extension, then it kind of got stagnant. I don't know if he's checking out the market. The first base market, I mean, he's not a first baseman, but I mean, I guess that would be one of the defensive positions he would play if you would classify him maybe as a left fielder, first baseman. I know he played catcher before, but these are long gone, or a DH. But if you had to put a spot on him defensively, it'd probably be first base or left field. He could just be looking at that market and seeing how it's played out and how he could be like one of the most coveted players on that market and just letting this season play out and playing it out that way. But for him, that could be a benefit. But for the Phillies, I
well,
feel like that's like a big risk to take.
well, yeah, that's the thing is the Phillies need to make it a top priority to extend Kyle Schwarber. And I was talking about this the other. I originally had brought this up, not on the podcast, but I brought this up last year. But now I think at this point it's no brainer. Kyle Schwarber is the 3rd best power hitter, or at least he's the 3rd best home run hitter in Phillies history, only behind
I
Mike
thought you were going
Schmidt
in a
and Ryan
different. I thought you
Howard.
were going in a different spot here. I thought you were going to say currently in the league, and I was actually going to be interested to see who you would have in front of him. Not saying that he is number one, but obviously Judge. But who would be the other guy? Like,
Well,
where would you put him?
I would say in terms of home run hitters, I would put Judge and Otani in front of him and no one else. So yeah, in terms of the league and in terms of all-time Phillies, I would say Kyle Schwarber is the 3rd
Who would
best
be
home
your other
run hitter.
Ryan Howard, obviously, and
Ryan
then
Howard and Mike Schmidt, the other 2.
I mean,
Um,
short-lived, but you can't put him in front of Jim Thome.
yeah,
Short-lived though,
but that's the thing; it was way too short-lived. So yeah, I do put him ahead of Tomey.
2 stints though. That's my favorite. That's actually
Back-to-back 40 home run seasons. He has some of the longest home runs you've ever seen from a Philly.
his
Um,
RBI numbers are horrible, not based off of him,
But
just
that's what
based off
I'm
of
talking
where he's
about
batting at.
pure in terms of like purely a home run hitter. I would put
Like, it's so
Kyle
sad.
Schwarber
I
ahead
remember
to me.
Mike
And
Trout had that.
in a Phillies uniform, to
Yeah.
clarify.
Remember, like, Mike Trout had that one season, I think he had, like, 39 home runs and, like, 78 RBIs. Like, that just can't happen. Like, that can't happen. You know what I mean? That's just
And that's the other thing too, is it's not really Schwarber's fault that he's batting in the leadoff spot and he's not getting a ton of ribbies.
like, when you
So
hear
yeah,
Alec
no,
Boehm,
I
like,
put him
was,
ahead
like,
of
the
him.
leading RBI guy, you're like, "What?" Like, Alec Boehm over Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. I think Bryce only has, what, 100 RBI season in his career.
Who?
Bryce.
No, he's what? No, he has more than 100 RBI season.
Are you
He did it in
sure?
a Phillies uniform once. He definitely did it in a Nationals uniform because he had the.
He's got 2.
Yeah, I think his other one is his first year as a Philly, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 114 his first year as a Phil.
I mean, he's got 99, which is close. But if you look at Bryce Harper's numbers, that's not. I mean, but there's also the thing about Bryce is like when you have to pay attention to him and his career. Like if you're looking at it from just baseball reference, you're like, oh, he's a really good player, but like he's not top tier. But when you see how hot he gets, like he'll miss 40 games a year, he'll miss like a 3-week stretch of time, and then he just starts going off. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
that's when it starts
That's the
accumulating
thing with
very
Harper
quickly.
is he hasn't done the best job at consistently staying on the field for an entire season. And then of course the 2020 season got cut short. Because it was only 60 freaking games. But I do want to move on from the hitters to the pitchers. Okay. We've talked about Nola. We've talked about Walker, 2 horrible pitchers at this point in the season. But I want to talk about the good. I want to talk about Jesus Luzardo, man. Jesus, he's off to a great start this season. Great start to his contract.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking about like it sucks that Taiwan Walker and Nola are taking up $44 million on the thing, but they also got Christopher Sanchez to that extension for an absolute steal to the point where
Oh,
they're
he's
probably
only
going
on
to
a
have to
1 year deal.
yeah, they're going to probably have to
600,000? What the fuck?
yeah, I don't know if he's going to hit arbitration or what's currently. I haven't really ever looked at Jesus Luzardo's deal. He might still be working off that first deal that he was originally on, but when you have like that 44 million being eaten up by those 2 guys, and then you got Christopher Sanchez who you got for an absolute steal to the point where I think Christopher Sanchez might actually they might have to renegotiate that contract and give him more money.
He's also off to a great start. Right now, Sanchez and
Not only a
Luzardo.
great start, the other day, it was like a historic day on Saturday for the Phillies. 5 double plays.
Yeah,
Wasn't all
yeah.
5 was all 5 with Luzardo on the mound?
That I'm
Had to
not
at least
sure
be
of.
like 4. It was like from the 2nd inning, like to like the 4th, 5th, or 6th inning where they felt like
I
they
think
had
there was
4 or 5
one
consecutive
late
innings in a row
innings
with
double
double plays.
play, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I didn't even. I didn't like it. It sounds like a lot, but it's also like you don't realize how rare it is, I guess. Like it was made out to be a big deal, like a bigger deal than I thought it would be. I didn't realize it's that rare, even though it sounds like a lot. But yeah, I mean, Sanchez and Lazard, they're off to great starts. Wheeler, his first 2 outings were great. He's been a little slippery since, but that's the thing that's the difference between Wheeler and Nola is when Nola starts to pitch bad, it's like, oh, here we go. This is going to last a while. And when Wheeler has a couple bad outings, you have the confidence that he's going to pick it right back up.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is also like Nola has never had like absolute dominant stuff. Like he's had that curveball that's really worked for him, but like velocity wise, he hasn't really ever been able to gas people out. Like his fastball max is what, like 94, 95, and he doesn't really use.
His fastball has been down lately.
Yeah, I think they pointed to Jesus Luzardo, like kind of, or it was either I think it was Christopher Sanchez, where Christopher Sanchez has this trait now where he starts off a little bit slower than he can actually pitch to begin the game, and then he starts cranking up the velocity later in the game, and that was something that a lot of people alluded to with Christopher Sanchez progression, especially in this spring training, that his velocity like jumped like 3 miles per hour, which was really good to see. But Yeah, if you already have like a weaker velocity level and then it starts to weaken even more, and that's not really, like you were more so a placement guy, but it's coming even slower, and you're trying to, you get caught in a spot where you have to pitch into the strike zone. And also, it's been known that ever since the pitch count has come into effect, that Aaron Nola, of all the pitchers on the Philly staff, has probably been the most affected by the pitch count. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't have the same routine that he's
he
able to
didn't
get
have a
into.
bad he at least he didn't have a bad season last year. It was definitely a solid
I just
bounce back
last year,
year
every time I
from
think
the
about
year
Aaron
one.
Nola last year, I think about that Red Sox start where he just got teed off on in Boston, and
Oh,
that's
yeah,
when
I
like
forgot about
it's
that.
like
I
it
did
almost
see
like
it, though.
every time he's like pitching bad, I feel like it's just like a flashback to like a moment like that where he's like is pitching bad and it starts to compile because he's not like gaining confidence in a way. It's more so he's thinking about like how he's been in this situation before, and he kind of starts to like struggle with it a little bit mentally. So I feel like a lot of it, some of it is physical, but there has to be something mental going on with Aaron Nola for him to be, struggling in the way that he's struggling. But I mean, I'll give kudos to him now. Um, He's kind of battled a little bit today. It was a rough start to the game. It could be a lot worse than the 2-run
He
deficit that they
has
had.
bounced back since he gave up those 4 runs. He's had a couple shutdown innings since then. By the way, Johan Rojas, a leadoff double now. Trey Turner's at the plate, counts 2-2. But you did mention, Nola, unlike Wheeler, not having any crazy stuff. One pitcher I do want to bring up again, who we brought up last week. Speaking of guys who do have crazy stuff, Orion Kerkering, man, I tell you, there has not really been a reliever like this in a while where I am locked in anytime he's on the mound. Like I am excited to see him pitch. That sweeper is just a thing of beauty. I would say the last time I got like this excited about watching a reliever was probably the first couple years of Sir Anthony Dominguez before he got hurt for a while.
I still think that was a mistake getting rid of Sir Anthony. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
it
absolutely.
was like
And that's another thing we talked about.
someone just cranked a dinger.
What? Don't
Bryce
I must be behind. Don't give me
Bryce Harper
that.
ties the game 4-4.
Oh, come on. I'm behind. You can't do
You
that.
need to you need to fix your cable, bro.
Oh my God, that's a towering shot. Oh, you
Back to back
son of a
nights.
bitch. You son of a bitch. You spoiled it for me. God damn it.
I mean,
God damn it.
you sit here. I'm not even watching the game. I just have the box score up, and you're sitting here giving live updates the entire time. And I just mentioned one thing
Oh, I'm not
and
live.
you're upset about.
I didn't realize I'm not live. Damn it.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I
I
guess
just learned the hard way. I'm
this is
not
pretty
live.
good. I mean, when you look at resumes, Robbie Ray was he on the Rays when he won the Cy Young back in the day?
Not sure. As Kyle Schwarber, oh my God, anyone with a remote amount of speed would have beaten that out for an infield hit, but he grounds out. Um,
Yeah, I mean, Robbie Ray, he's older. He's 33 now. I guess he's like the same age as Nola. He's 3-0 on the season, lower than a 3 ERA, 2.93 going into the game. Has been an extremely good pitcher for a really long time. So if you can battle back into a game when you get caught in a deficit like that versus a pitcher of that caliber, it always feels good. And then they're coming off the
oh no, he's
performance where
safe. Schwarber's safe.
they're
Schwarber
coming
with
off
an
the
infield
performance
hit.
last night where
Wow.
Justin Verlander was on the mound. Justin Verlander is obviously an iconic pitcher, but the current state of Justin Verlander is nothing that I'm like,
I
scared of at
saw
all.
yesterday or the day before he came out of the bullpen. I was like, since when is Verlander not even a starter anymore? But anyway, before we move on from the fight ends, let's talk real quick about how we see the rest of the season playing out now.
Well, do you think with the struggles right now, we'll start here, the same topics that we always talk about, there's been the same issues for this team forever. It's been the bullpen, having more than consistent like 2 to 3 guys that they can rely on, which is hard to come by in the MLB, as we know. But
At least
like,
Romano finally pitched well last night, but yeah.
yeah, Jose Ruiz, I watched that absolute bomb that he allowed last night, which was just gross. But those are the type of guys that was it Jose Ruiz? I think it might have been, or Tanner Banks gave up the home run. I forget which one it was, but
Yeah, I don't
um,
remember.
their bullpen's been an issue, and their outfield is an absolute mess right now. Absolute mess right now. Just, I mean, Brandon Marsh. I try and root for
Well,
Brandon Marsh
other
as
than
much as I can.
Castellanos, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that's just a known thing. I mean, maybe that's why, to the point where Kyle Schwarber's playing in the outfield. Maybe it's to get a break and to see a different type of lineup possessed out there. But I think the struggling outfield has gone to the point where we had to put Kyle Schwarber out there, which Kyle Schwarber, of all the games that he played last year, he played the outfield, 2 or 3 times total last year. So that just shows you the current state of what they got going on. But I think you can get by with, if you can get by with Schwarber in left and Johan Rojas in center field, as in, I guess their offense and defense kind of cancels each other out. Like, Rojas can hold a little bit more of a defensive presence out there that Kyle Schwarber lacks, but offensively, outside of the double that he gave you tonight, Rojas is going to struggle a lot, and Schwarber is arguably not arguably, he is the second best hitter on the Phillies. But it's the same issues that we always talk about. So I'm saying all this to say, do you think it's actually not like, say, push the panic button? Because this team, as much as they've struggled, they're still above 500 significantly. Also, real
No,
quickly,
it's listen. It's not time to push the panic
well,
button.
I was
I
leaning
mean,
into more so panic button. Like, that's why I was trying to elude that word, because I was trying to find a better way to put it. Not the panic button, but is it time to actually start considering making moves this early in the season to get ahead of the curve, or to see what type of talent's out there? Or do you think it's kind of ride it out and start experimenting what they could possibly do with the current guys that they have? Because real quickly, this tidbit, how I watch MLB Network every night, because I like betting on, like, baseball is like my favorite, like, sports, like, money line bet. So I'm always trying to pay attention to what's going on around the league. If Phillies fans aren't paying attention, Rhys Hoskins is one of the worst players in the entire MLB right now. Hasn't hit a home run. I think he's batting like literally under 130 or something outrageously crazy. That's just a side note, because I heard people saying like, "Oh, I would trade Alec Bohm for Rhys Hoskins back right now," but people don't understand the Phillies moved on from Rhys Hoskins because he's a one-tool player. If he's not batting for power, he's like one of the least impactful players in the entire MLB. But besides the fact of that, while I'm watching MLB Network, it was Monday where they lost the Giants, like, pretty gross, right? It was like a bad loss on Monday, and then they came back.
yeah. They started off.
So they have a
They took an
4-game
early
series.
lead
So
and then gave up like 6 runs in one inning.
right after the Phillies game
JT
ended,
strikes out in the
I
inning.
put MLB Network.
Why is he DHing?
Yeah, it's crazy. But right after the Phillies game ended, I put MLB Network on, and they were going through the highlights, and they were kind of panning around across the league. And the dialogue that the national media was using for the Phillies was so interesting. They were like so optimistic about the Phillies. Like, they were talking about this dialogue saying, like, even when the Phillies are getting beat up, they show you why they're such a team that you can just love. And they're talking about them so positively, and they're not even like, they're just like glossing over, like, oh, it's just
They've been
another night.
doing that. They've been doing that since before the season
So a
even
lot of
started.
people, I feel
I
like
don't
around
get
here
why
locally,
the Phillies
we're
are
a lot
getting
harder
so
on
much
them locally
national
than
hype.
like the national media actually is. I mean, we're the team that came into the season second in the power rankings behind the Dodgers, and people still believe about the Phillies in that
Yeah,
way.
I don't. I honestly don't get it, and it's so confusing because as a Phillies sports fan, I'm so used to, even when things are going well, we're constantly being doubted. This is the exact opposite. It's so weird. The thing with the Phillies is in 2022 and 2023, both years they got off to a bad start, and then they ended up picking things back up. 2022 it was much more prolonged than 2023. But listen, you gotta wait. It's a long season. You gotta wait until a month in, see how they're playing, see if they start playing well after a month. As of right
Yeah,
now,
but
I'm just
also the other case is, like, you can give it a month and you can say that, and I agree wholeheartedly with you about giving it a month. But when you got guys like, to the point where you can't even give them 2 to 3 weeks, like Brandon Marsh batting 100, like, he's batting so bad where he cannot be on the field. And that was the plan before
yeah,
the season
no,
started.
that's
We
the
talked
thing.
about the
Yeah,
report
listen,
that
you can
he's
give
the
the
everyday guy.
team. you can give the team a longer leash, but at this point with Brandon Marsh, it's like let's give Rojas some more starts for the time being, or Edmundo Sosa if you're able to put him in center. I don't know if he has the capabilities of that, even though they are moving him around. But right now,
Well,
I mean,
Kepler's been hot in this series, doesn't he have like 4 or 5 hits in this specific series? So
Kepler has been very hot and cold since the start of the
yeah.
year.
But I
But
like having a guy like that because I feel like our bench, we don't have like a big bat on the bench. We don't have a Matt Stairs coming out that actually in a big spot can produce a gigantic hit. I don't believe in that. I mean, Edmundo Sosa can do that, but he's more so of a utility guy
not,
where
yeah,
he
not
is
like,
like a
yeah,
bench guy,
he
but
doesn't
he's like
have that
playing
kind
every
of
single
home
day
run
because of the
power.
struggles in other areas.
Yeah. But as of right now, my opinion on this team is the same as when the season started. I think they're going to win 92 or so games and lose in the wild card round, and that kind of remains the same. It was
Well,
starting
I'll
to
tell you
shift
one team
towards
that
more
really scares me.
optimism after the first few series, but now it's kind of back down to where I had this team at the start of the year. Nola with another out recorded.
Well,
Nola survived the
I'm starting to get
fourth
really
inning, which
scared of the
is
Padres.
surprising.
I think the Padres are a team that's really, really a force to be reckoned with, and then we still have to deal with the Mets and the Braves not at full strength. I think
Weren't
today's
the
Wednesday,
Giants
so
really good going into this series?
who?
The Giants? Or am I confusing them with a different team? I think.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah, the Giants. Yeah, they're actually looking really good this year as well. Currently a 12-5 record, which means they went into this series with a 11-4
Well,
record.
today's Wednesday, so I saw that Spencer Strider's back for the Braves. So, I mean, that's a huge
Hmm.
get for them. So,
But I'll tell you what, if the Phillies hold on to win this game as Nola allows a double, if the Phillies can find a way to win this game, that means they do win the season series against the Giants. Unless do they play them tomorrow? Actually, if
they
not, that
do.
would
I'm going
okay.
to the game tomorrow.
So, well, they'll at least if they do end up winning this game, then they will at least tie the series. I mean, they'll have the series lead, but that means at the very least they'll finish the series with a tie, with the possibility to win the series tomorrow. With again, I mean, the Giants have been very hot to start the year, so if they end up winning or tying the series, I would say that's a victory for the Titans. Anyway, it's time to move on. It's time for my meatball of the week. And I would say for like maybe the fifth, sixth time in the history of the fourth, somewhere around there, time in the history of the podcast. I don't know the name of this week's meatball of the week because he was just a random fan in the crowd, which typically that's how it goes when I don't know the meatball's name. But this week's meatball of the week is a guy who, replicated what another meatball once did back during the postseason. A guy, foul ball, Mike Trout goes to
Well, you
field it.
nailed it because that's exactly what I was thinking about. I was going to actually ask you which situation you thought was worse, but the playoff situation has to be worse just based off the
Yeah,
circumstances.
because it's in the playoffs. But yeah, once again, a fan has ripped a ball out of an outfielder's glove, this being the glove of Mike Trout this time, and the weird part is he's barely faced any repercussions, unlike the fan in the postseason. But yeah, random fan, you are my meatball of the week.
Did we mention who was the old quarterback that just did that like a couple weeks ago? He's the old
Oh,
famous
come on.
athlete
Oh,
quarterback that just did that and made a ridiculous, nasty, like no show in the glove, just little flip of the wrist catch and was like
Giants just
flexing
took the lead.
on. Was it Max Muncy that it happened to? I think it was Max Muncy that it happened to. The Dodgers like third baseman. It might have been him, somebody like that, and he just hit him with one of these. Ball drops right into his glove, and it was a former high level quarterback. I got to look it up because it's going to make me mad. I want to say Rodney Pete for some
Rodney
reason.
Pete was the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles.
It was
Gi-
Rodney Pete. It was
Giants
Rodney
just
Pete.
took the
It
lead
was
back.
Rodney Pete, and it was Max Muncy that it happened to, and it was the original. It was the Dodgers Cubs Tokyo series game. So he was out in Tokyo doing that. And it was
Interesting.
Max Muncy that he did it too. So I kind of had everything squared off there. Had all the right because I thought that was crazy. It was a crazy catch, and it was it was funny, but it was just like it's funny you see like a normal guy do that, and just like for Rodney Peete being a professional athlete before, like he must have known the pain of like maybe never being interfered with by a fan, but could like understand the perspective of why a player would be upset, and like maybe other times in a basketball, like LeBron jumps into the crowd and knocks a drink on Kevin Hart. You know what I mean? They're both laughing about it, but like this was like Max Muncy was mad. You know what I mean? You're taking an out away from me. You know what I mean? So I thought that was funny. But yeah, the Mike Trout, for some reason, my initial reaction was like, wow. For some reason, I was like, damn, that fan's strong to be ripping the ball out of Mike Trout's hands. But then I just realized like the angle that Mike Trout was on was probably the weakest possible position that he could be in to
Yeah,
like,
you're like
be able to he's
contorted and all
jumping
with
with
his
his legs
forearm.
not even attached to the ground with no base. And like not only it wasn't even one hand, dude had his hand on the glove and then ripped the ball out with the opposite hand. Like he had a whole like it was almost like it was like a drill, like he had like planned out. He was ready to do that at any moment in time, which would like made it even a little bit goofier and funnier. But yeah, it's crazy how fans get in the way of that. For some reason, it keeps reminding me. Remember,
I don't know why fans are starting to think they can do that. You can't.
wasn't it a remember who was it? Russell Westbrook in Philly? Was it Russell Westbrook or Marcus Smart in Philly where the fan got pushed, or like he pushed the fan? It happened to
I'm not even
Marcus
quite
Smart.
sure
That
what
was
you're
at
referring
Oklahoma
to.
State when he was in college. But remember, like the fan said something crazy to Russell Westbrook in Philly. The Sixers fan, he got kicked out immediately.
I remember the incident with Bradley Beal. I remember that.
Which one was that? I probably remember it, but I
That
gotta
was
remember.
when Bradley Beal missed the first free throw, but made the second one, and then the fan like flipped him off, and then he went to confront him, and he was like, "Sorry, man, I just wanted a frosty."
Yeah, that's crazy behavior. They
Yeah,
just
but anyway, speaking of Sixers, let's talk some Sixers here
well, real
because
quickly, since you just brought that up, Mike Budenholzer, the old championship coach for the Milwaukee Bucks when they won and had Drew Holiday, former Sixer, on his team, playing a gigantic role for them, just got fired by the Suns. Obviously, the Suns and the Sixers are like the same team, just in different conferences, with having a trio of guys that are high level players and just not making anything out of it. Mike Budenholzer got fired. A report about Mike Budenholzer asking Bradley Beal to play like Drew Holiday and be the Suns version of Drew Holiday. How do you think that would go? One, if you were a coach asking another player as established as Bradley Beal to play like another player in the league, and just in general, just asking another NBA player to play the role of another successful NBA player. But I feel like the issue lied where like the status of Bradley Beal currently as a player. Because if you're like Jose Alvarado and the New Orleans Pelicans, say they were a playoff team, and a guy with his resume gets asked to play a role by the coach, he probably buys completely into that. But when you ask a guy that's on 100, like, on a 35, $40 million contract per year guy, max contract guy, to go do that, it's even higher of a contract than that, because that was just like the max number of Tobias Harris years ago. So it's even higher for a max contract for Bradley Beal, and a guy with a no trade clause. Do you think that's just completely out of pocket for a coach, or do you think it's,
no,
him
I
just
mean
being kind of tone
his
deaf to like
listen,
trying to
he's
create a championship team?
yeah, no, I mean not at all. I mean, looking at Bradley Beal's numbers this year, he's putting up 17 points per game on on
Yeah, but
no,
that's the
I guess the
typical
percentage.
third star, three ball handlers on one team. They're all trying to be
But
stars. That's the stat
but that's
line.
part of the thing too is like Drew Holiday on a lot of the teams he was on, he was the third option,
Yeah, but he was
right? Like
never,
it's
besides
not
being
like
on the
you're
Sixers.
asking it's not like you're asking Wizards Bradley Beal, who's the star of the team, to jump into a Drew Holiday role. It's like, listen, Drew Holiday is a championship winning player. You want to win a championship. Bradley Beal isn't the you know, electrifying point scorer that he was in Washington. He's doing a good job as the third option, putting up 17 points per game. But like that, I mean, that level of play, I think constitutes asking somebody to step into a certain role. Yeah, no, I don't think that's out of pocket at all. And I think if he has an issue with it, then he has an issue with winning.
Yeah, and we're also talking about a guy that came from the Washington Wizards that, you know, got beat up by LeBron how many times in the playoffs, and pretty much outside of just getting beat up by LeBron and swept by LeBron, like what has Washington when he was there ever accomplished, or what on his resume shows or warrants that
Also,
he's
they
a
also
championship
lost
player?
to the Sixers the year they had Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. I remember
I remember
watching some of those games
that was
during
the matchup.
Memorial Day weekend, and I remember watching it in Wildwood and then getting really drunk in North Wildwood after one of the wins and telling a lot of different people out at the bars that I would see them on Broad Street. God,
Yeah,
was I wrong.
that's I remember I was in Atlantic City when Mike Scott hit that game-winning shot versus the Brooklyn Nets in the playoffs, and I lost my mind. But
That was a different year.
Bradley, that was like 2019.
That was the year they lost to the Raptors.
Yeah, 2018. But
2018 to 2019, yeah.
but I completely lost my train of thought with Bradley Beal. The Sixers. I remember when they first drafted Markelle Fultz, #1 overall. That was their season opener in Washington versus prime John Wall and Bradley Beal, and I was really hyped for that matchup. The Sixers ended up losing that game, but um, that was like Markelle Fultz was kind of showing a little bit of flashes in that game, but it just like didn't seem something just felt off from the beginning about the Sixers with Markelle Fultz. Like he was flashing a little bit, but the consistency of like what you would think the type of mannerisms and movement from a #1 overall player just weren't really ever there.
He looked so good in the summer league after we drafted him. He looked horrible in the workout before the draft. He looked really good in the summer league up
I
until he
remember
got hurt and was on.
my friends that year asked me who the #1 pick was going to be, and we were watching like basketball on a random Sunday, and it was Washington like playing, and I was kind of trying to tell them that like yeah, it's this weird state of the NBA right now to where like these programs that are like significantly under 500 are producing like the #1 overall picks. Like LSU with Ben Simmons there was like, I think they like won 13 games when Ben Simmons was on that campus. And the same thing with Washington when Markelle Fultz was there. But I remember seeing a video of Markelle Fultz touching the high school scoreboard, jumping off the wall like in a high school gym, and I was like, "Oh my god, what is this dude's vertical?" And just like him being an athletic freak, but it
He had
obviously
the potential to be like the next James Harden. I remember that being a guy he was getting compared to a lot, but he got hurt and then he just forgot how to shoot, and it was all downhill. I mean,
erratic
that's just been the
syndrome.
luck of the Philadelphia 76ers. But going back to the Sixers, thank God the season has finally come to an end. The draft order is now set. Well, not the draft order, but the lottery odds are now set. The Sixers locked in with the fifth worst record. They have a 60%. I think it's exactly a 63% chance to keep their pick, which is good. I believe a 10% chance at the #1 pick. It's equal odds for both the 1, 2, and 3 picks. 10% chance at each. 26% chance at the 7th pick, which would cause them to lose their pick. But all total 63% chance to keep it. I hope to God that they do. If they don't, I will be very upset. This horrible, horrible season would have all happened for nothing. I
Oh
would
my
be.
god,
I'm just saying,
I'm
but
trying to
I
compare this.
would
I'm
be
trying to compare this
thrilled.
like
Listen. Hold on. Let me finish my thought here. I would be thrilled if they land either the second or the third pick. Because if they land the second, it guarantees they're getting Ace Bailey. I think it's a no-brainer if you're the 76ers. That's who you take with the second pick. And then with the third pick, I think they still have a shot at him because I mean Ace Bailey isn't like the consensus #2 selection. It kind of more so depends on what team drafts second. So even if you get the third pick, I think you got a good shot at Ace
and like I
Bailey.
said
And I think
before, I'm an Ace Bailey guy, but a lot of mocks have Dylan Harper going before him, and Dylan Harper is a 6'6" guard where you could justify the Sixers taking him
you
regardless of
could,
position.
but we are so guard
No,
heavy.
I'm so
And
no,
Ace
Ace Bailey,
Bailey
when
is
you
a
got the
freak of
opportunity of
an
a guy that
athlete
shoots like
at
that at that
6'10".
size, you gotta
There
take
is
that.
nobody else who other than obviously Cooper Flag. There is nobody who I want more than Ace Bailey. I think he would be a perfect fit. So
I'm
that's
down if they end up with 5 or 6 and Con Knipples on the board, the other white Duke player that a lot of people have seen play, they just don't know him by name or they are that have trouble pronouncing his name. He's also a top 10 recruit coming out of high school, and he's an absolute beast too. He's not anywhere near as athletic as Cooper Flagg is, but as a player, he's got all the traits as a player too. He's just a little bit less athletic. Than that. So I'd be happy about him. But it's just like when I see like certain moves around the league and what was given up for him. Like I was watching the game last night, the Magic and the Hawks, and I love the way the Magic have built the roster with Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero. Those are like two guys. Like when those guys get into the primes of their career in like 2 to 3 years, they're going to be a serious issue to deal with. But when I was looking at the Hawks, and I'm like, I completely forgot that Karis LeVert was on the Hawks, and he's on the Hawks because of the DeAndre Hunter trade. And it's like, dude, if the Sixers would have just like not signed Paul George and got like a guy at the trade deadline like DeAndre Hunter as their forward, as their, their athletic wing that they could use. And like the Cavs use him as a 6-man, and he plays like 30 minutes a game, but like he's definitely a starter in the league. And he's, in my opinion, I think DeAndre Hunter's better than I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. OG Anunoby on the Knicks. You know what I mean? I think he's arguably
Hunter's
just
pretty
as
good,
good as
man.
Mikal
Hunter's pretty
Bridges. So like
good.
forcing the issue to always get a max contract player instead of letting guys grow into the role that they are. Like the Pelicans are horrible, but they got Trey Murphy averaging 22 points a game for them. You know what I mean? And they have a bunch of guys hurt. Like if they were all healthy, they'd be a good team. So also with the Pelicans, they're going to have Joe Dumars, who is the guard next to Isaiah Thomas from the 1980s Pistons team that used to beat up on Michael Jordan left and right all day long. But he's going to become the vice president of basketball operations, it looks like. And a lot of rumors are pointing towards him. One of the first moves that the front office is going to force him to do is trade Zion Williamson. So that's going to be a dynamic name that's going to be out there in the markets. It's getting to the point where, like, I know he's not a reliable player at all. He's always out of shape, almost like reminiscent of like Joel Embiid, but just a little bit smaller. But like, if this is the time where, like, if you are seriously considering trading Joel Embiid or just trying to move on from Paul George, this is like the type of move to, retain a star that I would actually go after. And the problem with Zion is Zion's not a bad player. Has never had anything to do with him being on the court. When he's on the court, he's absolutely electric. Like his career numbers are like 27, 7, and like 5 assists low key. But the thing about him is him being on the court and being healthy. But even with him struggling to be on the court in his career, but proving that when he is on the court, he's absolute dynamic, I would use that as a pivot with his age to keep that window open. I would be down to pair him as bad of a situation going back into like a stylistic player like that would be for the Sixers. I would actually would be down to make a move like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying with, them prioritizing max contract players too much. I mean, I think there are guys that, I mean, like a guy like Buddy Hield, I would have liked to have seen him stay in Philly. I think not only do they not really prioritize letting their own guys grow and develop, but they don't really prioritize, the solid role players that they bring in, keeping them around, and if they let Quentin Grimes walk in the offseason, then it'll just be another example of that. I think Quentin Grimes is a guy they should stick with. It should stay on the team.
Real quickly, if we're scanning the roster of guys that have been playing currently, like through the downlight to the point where Tyrese hasn't been playing, if we're talking about those realm of guys, Justin Edwards, Quentin Grimes, Adeem Bona. Those are probably like the 3 guys off the top of my head that are solidified will have roles on this roster.
I think Bona for sure. Edwards, to me, he's one of those guys that played really well in the process, and then once the team gets good, it's like, okay, he's not actually that good. He just looked
But
good
he's not like Jeff Galton, where he's just like, this was the 3rd overall recruit out of high school 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I just think
talent.
Grimes and Bona have proven themselves more And
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they've also like Dean Bona was a draft pick by them. He wasn't an undrafted player like Justin Edwards was, but you also could see undrafted guys. Look how good Austin Reeves is.
I
Look
also
how
think Yabusele is definitely a guy they should
Oh,
keep
well, yeah.
around.
I didn't really consider him. He was more so already carved out a role while the team was
Mm,
good. I'm more so
yeah,
talking about guys that have kind of been playing in
but
the low light. You know what I mean? So, but if the
yeah.
Sixers
Anyway,
don't hold on to
though,
their, if the Sixers don't hold that pick this year, like we're talking about, I just looked up the trade, the Bears Panthers trade, where they traded, for the number one pick to get Bryce Young. They traded DJ Moore and multiple draft picks to the point where I was listening to a draft podcast today, not to get side tangent on football, just making the comparison to the Sixers situation right now. But the Bears have, I think, the 39th pick in the second round and the 41st pick. So they're like looking at a running back to like add to their roster, and they could get one of those guys. And that second round pick, that's like a pick off of their stock second round pick. So I think the 39 is what they get from the Panthers in that trade. And they had the 41st overall pick this year just based off of where they landed in the standings. So they can get a running back off that. That's all from that Bryce Young trade where they traded all that and then literally ended up with the number one pick the next year. It's almost in that territory where if the Sixers can't keep this pick, it's like that territory of like
yeah,
disgusting.
yeah, in a way, because when they traded the pick, nobody thought they would end up having a horrible year this season. But hopefully they keep it. The draft lottery will take place in less than a month on May 12th. I'm excited / nervous. But let's talk about another draft. Let's talk NFL draft.
NFL draft. Yeah. Real quickly, there's going to be exciting. We got NBA playoffs coming up too, so that's going to be very exciting. I think both LA teams, the Lakers and the Clippers, could be serious contenders. I think the Clippers might take out the Nuggets. Nuggets and
I'll be
Timberwolves both.
rooting for the Warriors as I always have during non-Sixers.
Finally, the Warriors, of all their accomplishments in the past 15 years, they finally won their first playing game. Which was crazy. They were 0-3 in playing games. I don't know if you remember the ridiculous, probably the most underrated highlight of LeBron's career because it happened in the play-in when he hit that 40-foot
Oh my God! Don't even get me
shot
started
over
on
Steph
this.
Curry with 30 seconds left of the
Oh,
game.
I'm seeing 3 rims out there. I just shoved for the middle and shut the fuck up. Yeah, I remember that
Hater,
game.
hater. But yeah, I don't know if the Warriors. I mean, the Warriors are.
No, I don't.
Something
I don't
tells
think
me
they
like
have a shot
Jimmy
to
Butler
win it,
might go
but it's just.
dry offensively if like they're not relying on Steph. I don't think Jimmy at this point in his career. I mean, he dropped 38 last night.
Oh, you're finally pulling Nolan now. He's loaded the bases in the 6th inning after giving up 5 runs, and now is when you pull him. Jesus Christ. Um. Yeah, I don't have a ton of faith in the Warriors, but I will be pulling for them. Um.
Do you think real quickly we'll move on to NFL after this, but those two teams that I mean, we're talking about the Timberwolves or not the Timberwolves, the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, two of the most talented rosters in the entire NBA, but firing their coaches. Do you think they have their pedigree, talent and pedigree can carry them with short notice
The
of like all the
Warriors?
different no, the Grizzlies fired
Oh,
their coach Taylor Jenkins, and then Mike Malone got fired as well. Two teams
right.
that fired the coaches late that are going to be top Western Conference contenders. Do you think they actually will have enough?
I
To
think
make
I think the Nuggets have a good shot for sure, even with their head coach fired. I mean, in the NBA, it's not the same as like firing your head coach in the NFL. I mean, look at what the Cavs did after they fired their head coach and brought in Tyronn Lue. Look at what the Warriors did after they fired their head coach and brought in Steve
yeah,
Kerr.
but
I mean,
in season,
that was in season, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I do remember both of those moves being in season. I could be completely wrong, but that's how I remember it.
oh my god, I'm
Um,
literally drawing the blank on that old
I think
Cavs.
I think the Nuggets still have what it takes, unfortunately, because I am not a Nuggets fan by any means. But anyway, NFL draft. Um, my
So
head is still.
we know what the first two picks are going to be. It's pretty much locked in now.
I
We had a
think
dream last night that we saw Cam Ward on a next level glazing of the Titans, a glazing that we've never seen even Edmonds put out on their products for pastries and donuts of that sorts. This guy was on a Fortnite stream last night talking about being asked who his top 4 receivers in the league were, and he said Calvin Ridley, number 1, Titans' number 1 wide receiver. He said Jamar Chase, number 2, who's the number 1 wide receiver or number 2 wide receiver. Justin Jefferson, he might have said Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, vice versa, 2 and 3, but regardless, those are the 2 best receivers in the league that everybody would agree upon. And then number 4, he said Treylon Burks, one of the worst wide receivers, starting wide receivers in the entire NFL. The Titans wide receiver who was actually selected with the pick that they got from the A.J. Brown draft day trade that has done nothing in its entire career. Didn't he take that out? Was he the one that took a next level hit in the Eagles game? Wasn't that him? Didn't he get just absolutely blasted versus the Eagles? Like I'm not even trying to be like funny or anything, like almost like a stretcher type hit. Didn't he get like not paralyzed, obviously, but didn't he get hit extremely hard versus the Eagles when they played a couple years ago?
Oh, Burks?
For some reason, I don't know why I'm remember that.
I don't recall that. I do remember, of
Oh
course.
yeah, you remember? Was it Keeley Ringo just changed? No, it was Marcus Epps changed his life in the end zone. Oh, that was when he caught the ball for a touchdown and got murdered in the end zone. Murdered by Marcus Epps.
I barely remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, he was out. He was out cold, unconscious, and left the game. And
But listen, Cam Ward can glaze the Titans all he wants. He's not going to be the number 1 pick.
Also, on top of that, he actually found a way to diss the Eagles, sneak diss the Eagles. He said, "quote unquote, AJ Brown is a dog, but he's not Calvin Ridley."
Yeah, that's insane. That's just insane.
That's just meatball of the week for the rest of the year, in my
that
opinion.
is
He also was
that's a
asked
really
about
dumb thing to say.
he was also asked about the top 4 running backs in
Did
the league.
Ruiz just walk in a run? Ruiz just walked in a run. I'm turning this stupid fucking game off. This team is pissing me off.
He
Good
also
luck
was
tomorrow.
asked about the top 4 running backs in the league, and he said Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So that just shows you where he's going. Everything points towards the Cleveland Browns at number 2, taking Travis Hunter. He's the favorite. So it really comes down to pick number 3, a team that the Eagles will be matching up with at least twice a year. With the New York Giants, there's a little bit of steam with Shador recently. I think he just took had a private meeting with the Giants. A lot of it shows. I mean, I think Shador in the right system. I don't know if the Giants are that right system, but like he could be a serviceable quarterback, and he could
The
be good.
Giants are not a right system for anybody.
Yeah, well, for Shador, he needs a crazy offensive line. Like Shador and the Eagles, like minus the skill position players, just based off the offensive line, like the Eagles could work with Shador just based off how good their offensive line is, and that was his biggest issue with Colorado is he had no offensive line at all, and his best players were all skill position players, so he had to throw the ball, and he had absolutely no run game at all. So if he goes to a situation that has a run game and a good offensive line, he can make things happen, and I think he could actually make receivers around him better, but he's never going to wow you with arm talent. So I think he could be good for the Giants if they actually draft him, but on the same spot, being an Eagles fan growing up, I wouldn't be worried about facing Shador Sanders multiple times a year.
Well, especially not if he's on the Giants. I'm not worried about facing any quarterback multiple times a year if they're on the Giants. I don't care if it's Lamar Jackson.
Well, now we're talking about Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes on the Giants. Okay, now I'm a bit worried. Anyone else doesn't. All
right, Joe Burrow on the Giants. Come on now.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely
not. The Bengals offensive line isn't even good either. They drafted an offensive lineman in the first round that just doesn't really work out, it seems like, for the entire. And I feel like that's part of the reason why the Bengals can't have a good defense is because they have to waste all the resources on offensive line all the time. I mean, that was the big question mark. It was either Jamar Chase or Penny Sewell. And I was banging the drum for Jamar Chase just based off the connection. But looking back at it, as good as Jamar Chase is, being arguably the best wide receiver in the league, Penny Sewell wouldn't have been a bad pick either. And I feel like those type of, when you look at those like drafts that have guys like that, where it's like you're trying to pick between 2 all-pro best players, arguably at their position in the league type guys, either way you can go, and there's certain drafts that are like that. I feel like there's a particular part in this draft that teams could actually experience that level of talent going off in a row, but it just depends on the sequence of the talent being taken. Like we're talking about the top of this draft, like Cam Ward is a solid, has a lot of good tools as a quarterback. But if we're looking at like Ashton Genty, Mason Graham, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter, we're looking at a stretch of 4 players that are going to go in like the first like 2 to 6 or 7 picks that are like that's like an iconic run of talent in
I'm
a row.
looking at NFL.com's latest mock draft. They have Shador going 9th to the Saints. I don't see that. I don't see him falling that far. They haven't fallen past the Panthers. You're telling me if
Panthers?
Shador, what's that?
You said the
Oh wait,
Panthers?
I'm getting the Panthers. I was getting the Panthers confused with the Titans
I was
for a
about to
quick
say you're
second.
like
I'm
I thought
getting
you were like the
tired.
leader of the Bryce Young fan club.
Yeah, I'm getting tired, dude. I'm getting 2 blue teams confused. But either way, yeah, no, I don't see Shador falling a 9th at all. I mean, the Raiders, I would think if he's still available, the Raiders would take him.
Well, that's
I
also
wouldn't.
like a pick that seemed to be locked in unless someone comes in and scoops him beforehand. But everybody has
Well,
Ashton
yeah, I
Jenkins
mean,
going to the
I am
Raiders.
looking at the teams before that. The teams that need quarterbacks, obviously, you have the Titans, you have the
It's
Browns,
the first 3 teams, and then pretty much there's a
yeah,
drop
then
off
the
after
Giants,
that.
and then I mean, the Patriots have Drake May, the Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence. Although, you know what? It would not shock me if the Jaguars moved on from Trevor Lawrence. I'm not saying they should or they will. It just wouldn't shock me. The Raiders need
You
a
would pivot from
QB.
Trevor Lawrence to
The
Shador
Jets
Sanders.
definitely need a QB. So I don't see him falling past the
Well,
Jets
they just
either.
locked up Justin Fields to a 3-year contract at the age of
Yeah,
27.
but I mean, Justin Fields, you can't rely on him to be your franchise
Yeah, but you
quarterback.
also got to compare it to like if you're going to take that risk, like it made sense when Josh Rosen got moved on from for Kyler Murray, like the only guy in the history of sports to be a top 10 pick in 2 different sports. You know what I mean? When you have like a generational skill level player like that, but like, are you going to pivot from Justin Fields, who I don't think Justin Fields is the greatest quarterback prospect there is, or Trevor Lawrence? I mean, Trevor Lawrence was in the category of like top 10, top 5
I think
quarterback
right
prospects in the
now,
history of the NFL.
I
Like,
think
would you
right
pivot from
now,
that
if
for
you're the
Shador
Jets,
Sanders?
I think right now, if you're the Jets, the plan is for Justin Fields to be your quarterback. But if Shador Sanders somehow falls to pick 7, then you say
There's an
to hell with just
extreme. There's a better chance that he falls to pick 7 than he doesn't fall to pick 7.
I don't know
But
about
you're going to
that.
talk about we're talking about the Jets who have like historically low tight end production ever. You're going to pass on a guy like Tyler Warren for Shador Sanders?
Yeah. Yeah,
I would.
I mean, what have you seen out of Justin Fields? A solid 3 games in Pittsburgh. You know, I would definitely go with Shador Sanders if he falls to pick 7. Who do they have the Eagles taking in this mock draft that came out 2 days ago? They have them trading with Cleveland. Who do they trade in this hypothetical scenario? Cleveland jumps 1 spot from 33 to secure the 5th-year option. Okay, so they have him trading back by 1 pick. So who do they have? So, God damn it, now I got to go down a freaking rabbit hole here just to figure out who they have the Eagles taking.
Did they say the total trade package, the hypothetical
It
trade
also
package?
says Cleveland jumps 1 spot from 33 to secure the 5th-year option that comes with a first-round choice. What the fuck does that even mean? Subset. Why can't I pronounce that word? I am so tired right now. Selecting
Subsequently,
a potential
subsequential.
subsequently selecting a potential quarterback of the future. As for the Eagles' next move, even though Howie Roseman is usually open for business, it would be surprising if they traded back again from the top of day 2. So yeah, no, they don't really have what the trade package would be. I would not be surprised at all if the Eagles don't stay at pick 32. I also see them having the Bills taking Malachi Starks at pick 30. I think if Starks falls to pick 30, I think the Eagles make a move to trade up and get him
I'm taking the. I like Malachi Stark, so I'll be down with that. But if Nick Eamon and him are on the board, and I forget whose mock draft just had Eamon going to the Eagles at 32. If it's a pick between those guys and you have to trade up, I think there's more value in trading for the guy that tests out of the absolute gym.
They released a different mock draft on.
Well, I mean, there's also I look at
April 11th.
NFL.com's got 5 different analysts that put out different mock
Yeah,
drafts.
I'm looking at the second.
Well, you
most
know what
recent
is interesting? Where
analyst.
there's two or 3 of the top draft analysts now. Like we're talking about the top 5 guys, like the top 5 draft analyst guys, as in like Bucky Brooks and Mel Kiper have Shador as the number 1 quarterback on their board over Cam Ward.
The other mock draft has us taking Donovan. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Edge rusher out of Boston College.
Edge rusher out of Williamstown, New Jersey.
Oh my God! Yeah, it does say he's from Williamstown. I did not know that. Okay, yeah, let's get this guy. I'm sold. Let's get this guy.
Along with,
but no, in all seriousness, his broad jump is 9 feet 11 inches. That's pretty good. Vertical jump 35. 22 reps on the bench press. His combine, my God, he had one hell of a combine.
You want to hear a combine? I think I already told you this combine, but you want to?
I think we had discussed this combine before. I think you might be right, but with this kind of resume, I mean, I would not hate this guy.
Listen to this. Do you want this at the safety position? Let me just read this off to you real quick, and let me see how you feel about this at the safety position. 4.38 40. 1.1.
Oh my God, he had 16 and a half sacks his senior year. Yeah, no, this is the guy I want. I don't want anyone other than this guy. My God, this guy is good. Get him.
Well, a lot of people like Mike Green as well from Marshall, but apparently he has like 2 different.
I like this guy. I like
allegations against him.
He's from Williamstown. He had 16 and a half freaking sacks. He had a great.
I mean,
they could this guy an Eagle.
I don't care where.
By the way, final statement of the podcast. We're at almost an hour 15 minutes, and I'm getting quite tired. But I do want to say this. I can now relay this information. I was speaking to somebody who went to the same high school as Jahan Dotson. And do you remember the Eagles game against the Cowboys in 2017 when the first half was really close and then they dominated the second half and Jay Ajayi had that run that ended up being that huge mic'd up moment?
Yeah, I think we still have a pin to our Twitter.
Do you remember what happened when they interviewed Corey Clement after the game? Do you remember what Corey Clement revealed about himself?
No, I do not.
He revealed that he grew up a Cowboys fan, right? And in similar fashion, an Eagles player, a local kid in his first season as an Eagle who won a Super Bowl, I have learned from somebody that went to high school with Jahan Dotson that he grew up a Cowboys fan. He was a Cowboys fan back in high school. What the hell, Jahan? What the hell?
I'm glad that he changed his senses and grew up and realized, all the times that he's wasted in his life, especially a guy being around our age. So he's not seen any success for the Cowboys. So, yeah, I'm glad. It's funny when you see Abdul Carter talk, he still slips up and says, I'm an Eagles fan. And then he'll like backtrack it real quick and be like, all right, well, when I get drafted, I'm fully for that team, but I grew up an Eagles fan. That was like his most recent interview.
He wants to be an Eagles
teams, but I mean, we got a guy on our roster literally named after the Dallas Cowboys that plays a pivotal part for us that we're trying to move on from now. And the funniest part was, did you see the rumors about Dallas Goedert being tied to the Giants being interested in trading for him?
I did not see that.
The funny part is, until this exact moment that we're speaking on it now, it didn't register with me. And like you initially think that like, oh, I can't see Dallas Goedert play for the Giants, blah, blah, blah. But if you think about it, if he goes to the Giants, the draft pick that will be given to us will be a top 3 pick of the round of whatever they give to us. So that could possibly be the best value that we could get. The other issue is that Dallas Goedert's on the trade market, but also the Ravens, I think, are apparently looking are taking offers on Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews is a better player than Dallas Goedert. So that's the only issue, where there's going to be a lot of teams that would prefer to have Mark Andrews over Dallas Goedert. But I still think there would be a Dallas Goedert market if there is, but I'm not going to force the trade. But if the Giants want to give us like pick like 66 it would be, or somewhere in that range, 67, the third pick of like the third round, I'm completely open for that. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I've already voiced my readiness to move on from Dallas Goedert, but
Are you willing to take or are you willing to, like, we're talking about like your mentality with the draft for the Eagles sitting at 32? Are you sitting back waiting for the right position or player, and you're kind of uh you're targeting a position of need and looking at those specific players in that position group? Or are you going to just go out there and kind of do something that Jerry Jones made famous, that he's had a lot of success with, but he just hasn't gotten certain players at certain
I
spots?
wouldn't replicate anything Jerry Jones has done
Well, I mean,
other
if you're
than
gonna tip your cap to Jerry Jones on one avenue, and I will give him respect for this, he's very good at drafting. Very good at drafting. So I
well,
will give him
he
that.
hasn't been the past couple of years, but yeah, leading up to the past couple drafts, he has been very good
Well,
at drafting.
forget
The
the
past
fact of
two
it.
drafts have
Whatever,
not gone
whatever.
well for the
BPA,
Cowboys.
best player available. He's somebody that has always done that for the Cowboys, and it's worked out in the past for them. The Eagles have shown to do that, but also it kind of has matched up to what the roster has also needed. But do you think in a situation where they could be shopping Dallas Goedert, there's a lot of good tight ends. They just got rid of their starting safety for a backup guard who we don't know how much he's going to be able to play. Do you think they'll actually target a safety in the first round, or does it have to be the best player available on the board? Like, if Imanwari and
I
Malachi
think. Look,
Starks
I think if
are
you
gone,
can get Malachi Starks, you get Malachi Starks. But no, I mean, like if it's somebody like that edge rusher we were just talking about, then take him. There's always the second round. There's always Sidney Brown, who I'm still high on. I don't think
like
I
there's
don't
one of
think they
these.
need to reach for a safety if they don't have to.
Let me pitch you a couple scenarios, and we'll get out of here real quickly, just to see how you're feeling, just to see where we're at in the draft process. So, say one of these tackles, offensive tackles, drops, like Kelvin Banks, the Texas tackle that was seen as like a top 10 pick going into this year's draft, but he's had a couple injuries along the way and has kind of faded a little bit, like based off the whole process. But if he's sitting in the mid 20s, and he could be your Lane Johnson future replacement, but he might sit off to the side, or you can move him to guard if possible for the time being and skip him out to guard, or skip him out to tackle when Lane's done. Would you do that? And would you trade up for like a top talented tackle, even though it's not a position or need, or a guy like a guy that everybody's high on is saying the consensus most talented tackle in the draft, but he's not going to go number one over Membu or Campbell in the tackle department, is the tackle from Ohio State, Simmons. Would you go up and trade into the mid
I
20s
would
to get
not
a guy
trade
like
up for a
that?
tackle. No, I would not trade up for a tackle. Maybe next year's draft,
Even
but
if
as
he's
of
like a
right now,
top
we still
15
have
overall
another.
talent guy,
We
but
still have another year or two left of Lane Johnson. I listen. Howie Roseman is the kind of GM where it's like he can trade up and get whoever he wants in any draft because he's just a freaking wizard when it comes to trades and moving around picks and assets. So no, I would not trade up for a tackle in this year's draft.
what about, say there is a one of these tweener linebackers that's an off-ball linebacker that has edge rushing abilities. There's a couple of those guys sitting in this draft, and he's around that
If
same
they
type of
spend, if they are excellent as an edge rusher, then yes. If it's like they're mainly good as an off-ball linebacker, but they can also edge rush when they want to, then no.
Would you be willing to, if the best player available at pick 64 in the second round is a running back, would you take them?
Well, at pick 64, so what? Their second round pick
Yeah, they're a second round pick because
depends how good of a running back,
this
honestly.
draft class is absolutely loaded at running back. So there's going to be there's going to be a logjam of running backs that are talent wise
I,
better
I
than every
wouldn't,
other player on the board.
I wouldn't hate it. You can't count on Saquon Barkley to play every game every year. Um, AJ
AJ's
Dillon,
only
you
here for a
can't
little
count
bit. I
on.
like Will Shipley, and I think Will Shipley can still be used in a three-headed monster attack. He just possesses different things and can still be a good special team for you, but you're going to get a guy that's more talented than Will Shipley.
All
That
I will say is this. All I will say is this. The past few years, in the first few rounds of the draft, the Eagles have been loading up on defense, and it's been working. So that is primarily what I want to stick to, especially with how loaded this offense is.
corner sitting there, same scenario, tackle, mid-20s, really good corner. Would you move up for a corner?
Oh, absolutely. I think they could definitely use a corner. I like Ringo, but if you have a top tier corner available, yeah, go up and get him.
All right. I was just trying to see where the head was at. So I feel like those are scenarios that could be played out. There is a good chance that they could trade up or down in the draft. I think trading back a little bit, like I actually really like that mock draft idea, depending on what they would get back in return, only moving one spot, knowing that the spot that they're moving with the Browns, they get one spot moving back, and the Eagles aren't threatened by any means of the player that they were going to select there.
I would
If
not be
they're going to
threatened by any move the Browns are making. So yeah, I would
I
not
know,
be
but if the Browns are
threatened.
making that move, they haven't drafted a quarterback yet, and they're going up to go get a quarterback. You don't. I mean, we got Jalen Hurts. We don't feel threatened by any of that move, so it only
That's what I'm
makes sense
saying.
to take
Like
whatever the
whatever the
trade back
Browns
is.
are able to do, I'm not threatened by. It's the freaking Cleveland Browns, and they're not even in the same conference as us. So I'm not worried about whatever the Browns want to do.
But the Eagles could also, I feel like something that a lot of people are kind of downplaying a little bit is like another team seeing the value of getting a quarterback on a 5-year deal of the first round, getting them in the first round compared to not the first round and not being a 5-year deal, and having that 5th-year option. I feel like the Eagles are going to value that a lot this year, based off of like the contracts that they have on the roster. You know what I mean? With having all those big time contracts on the roster where they're going to want as much as rookie contract control over a player, regardless of position that they can possibly have.
Yeah. Well,
Especially the
anyway,
32nd pick being, that would be the lowest paid first round pick of anybody in the draft class. So, but thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of the Paisan Sports Podcast. What is that? Episode 94. So we're 6 podcasts off episode 100. We'll have to figure out something. When's that going to time up with? So 6 weeks. That'll be like MDW-ish time. One of my best friends is getting married right about around that time, but we'll have to figure out something special to do for the 100th podcast.
yep. Anyway, thank you guys for joining.
But thank you guys for tuning in. We'll ramp up the heat with NFL draft talk next week. I know Elevation 5280 Sports is going to be doing a live draft show on that Thursday that I'll be partaking in. I'm not sure if Dante is going to be partaking in that or not, but I'm going to try and get on there. I was supposed to be on last year's podcast, but I never got sent the link, so I wasn't able to join. But I'll be on there for you guys running through stuff. I got to talk to Mike and see what the occasion is for that, but we'll be doing that. So we'll have some draft content on Thursday as a company in Elevation 5280 Sports, and we'll have our normal podcast before next Thursday to talk all things Philadelphia sports and put a big lens on the NFL draft. And we've gotten this far in the process with no trades or anything. I doubt that's the case leading into next week. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back at the beginning of next week.